And welcome to the Wednesday, July 11th, 2018 Raymond Planning Board meeting. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum. Can I have a roll call, please?
Tricia Beaton.
Sheila Burke.
Greg Foster.
Kyle Bancroft.
Ed Cranage.
Okay, we are officially in session. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify me if you are unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's item in the following order. We will be looking at an applicant from George Bartlett, Cedar Lane, a private way extension in shoreline zoning. We have workshops with David Baker, the Alfred Mann Drive, a request for amendment to subdivision, Panther View Ridge subdivision, applicant Albert Frick, a discussion with the Planning Board regarding phosphorus control matters, extension of Westbrook Drive for development of proposed 3 lots beyond Westbrook Estates subdivision. We're going to have an open discussion. We're in a transition period with our board, so we'll be talking about board officer. There'll be planner communications, and in that communication there will be a discussion of the amended subdivision plan review of Valley View Acres subdivision as part of planner communications, and then we get to go home. So with that said, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with old business, and the first is the Cedar Lane, the private way extension and shoreline zoning. Who's here to speak to that? You want to get up and give us...
Hi, I'm Adrienne Fine. I'm the civil engineer from Paradigm Consultants. Cedar Lane Extension. This is being applied for by George Bartlett. So this is an extension of an existing private way, and this is located off of Sloan's Cove Road. It's on the eastern side of Panther Pond, and there is an existing gravel drive that extends from Sloan's Cove Road and ends in a cul-de-sac. So this figure, just kind of the aerial, so you can see where the gravel is, and then it ends just before the Yazbek parcel and the driveway that extends into that parcel, which is here. And this is also owned by Yazbek. This parcel is approximately 2 acres. That's owned by George, and the extension of this private way is to provide legal frontage for that lot. So as a result of that, we're also proposing some other improvements to the full extent of Cedar Lane, and implementing some stormwater management features. So a little background on kind of the right-of-way and legal aspects. I know that Jim went over a lot of this in his memo, and there is kind of a complicated history, but there is a right-of-way, and currently the Yazbeks own the right-of-way where the majority of this work is going to be taking place. And there is a right-of-way covenant drafted that's been preliminarily approved by all of the residents, and we're proposing to execute those covenants after the planning board approval takes place. So in talking with Jim, that's been presented as something that could be a condition of the approval. So those covenants allow George to have access and the rights to do the improvements that we're proposing to do within the right-of-way, and also create a homeowners association that will maintain the Cedar Lane right-of-way. So there's kind of 2 portions of the road as we're looking at it. So I'm going to refer to the portion before Malibu Drive, which is a new drive here, and then that's been approved and partially constructed, I think, and then the portion after Malibu Drive. So today there is an existing gravel road, like I said, ends in the cul-de-sac. It's about 900 feet long. The portion that's before Malibu Drive is about 15 to 20 feet wide in gravel surface, and It's in good condition. There is some overgrown brush along the sides, so we're proposing some maintenance and clearing of that as well. Then the portion that's after is a little narrower, about 12 to 15 feet of gravel, and ending in this smaller cul-de-sac. And then the parcel, which we're also kind of discussing because the whole purpose of this is to provide frontage for that parcel, is forested, and generally stormwater is draining from about this location of the roadway, and then the parcel drains towards the Panther Pond. So, let me flip this around. This is kind of a snapshot of where the cul-de-sac is and how the road, the proposed road, lays over that. So we're proposing to extend the road by about 112 feet to provide the frontage for this lot, and remove the cul-de-sac and create a hammerhead turnaround. And that will be, this is the parcel that's George's, and that will be into that parcel. And we have two different roadway cross sections that we're proposing. We've talked about this a lot with the planner and code enforcement, and looked at the stormwater management for the site and protecting Panther Pond. Came up with kind of this best approach. So the first section from Sloan's Cove Road down to Malibu Drive is going to be a 16-foot wide travelway with 2-foot gravel shoulders on each side, and that meets the standards for a private way serving 4 to 10 residents, with the exception of that shoulder, which we're asking for a 1-foot reduction in from 3 feet to 2 feet. So that is one waiver that we're asking for. And that will keep that roadway generally within the extents of the gravel that are there today, but improve the section so it's a defined travel way with defined shoulders, and clear that vegetation back so it is a safe, accessible route, without, clearing too much, changing the nature, and creating more stormwater than is necessary near the pond. And then after Malibu Drive, this portion of Cedar Lane only serves 3 residents, so we're requesting that we can transition to the cross-section that is allowed in the ordinance for private ways serving less than 4. So that would be 12 feet wide with 2-foot gravel shoulders. And again, that's so that we can keep the roadway generally in areas of gravel, maintain stormwater patterns. There are some existing ditches here that we're going to connect to and direct stormwater to manage phosphorus export and erosion control. That's what this area is. We have a proposal, and I'll show you the next slide in a minute, but to have buffering and ditching with a ditch turnout to reduce stormwater flows and pollutants that are getting to the pond. So those are our 2 different cross sections.
Can I ask a question while
Yeah.
we're here?
Yeah.
I see where the end, where I assume the terminus would be there on what we're discussing tonight, but obviously there's a dirt road that continues for quite a distance. Who owns the property as we keep going?
So this is all owned by the Yazbeks.
Okay.
And at one time, this and this and this circle are older right-of-ways that are being released as part of this to define the new right-of-way that's around the hammerhead. And this portion of it was created when the road was going to connect in a different location. There was a different right-of-way in place.
Well, I guess my question is are we going to be back here in 1 or 2 or 3 years having the same discussion when additional lots are going to be developed?
I can answer that. We've had discussion with Mr. Yazbek. He has no intention of developing that. In fact, he wants to put it in conservation.
Okay.
Yeah,
And he's
It's
all
in
of
tree
this
growth.
he's
land.
adamant about it.
It's in tree growth now?
Yes.
Okay,
So I think the next piece is the tolls.
right,
Yes,
as well.
Yes.
and the same with them.
yeah, okay.
And then, you know, the land up above is all accessed from the Malibu Drive now, so. And so then I can show you, this just has a little more detail of where we're really doing the bulk of the changes, the construction. Everything else is just improving what's there and making some widened areas and better shoulders. This is where the biggest change is, so we're gonna be removing the gravel cul-de-sac, returning that to vegetation, which will help with stormwater runoff. Constructing this hammerhead to provide the frontage, and we'll have ditching and culverts directing stormwater into this buffer area. And all the stormwater report and phosphorus calculations were provided with our submission, and we believe we're sufficiently managing this. And again, just asking that we don't have to widen the beginning of the road more than just that 2-foot shoulder to further help with reducing stormwater. And then the one other item that was kind of a waiver was that this hammerhead is farther from the end of the road than is required. In discussions with the town, that doesn't seem to be a problem for access or emergency turnaround. So that provides a better location for stormwater and keeping this turnaround on George Bartlett's property and away from the abutters where it's undesirable. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does the planning board have questions?
Yeah, I have one about the forested stormwater buffer. Have you checked into that to see that the water's gonna flow where you want it? It's, obviously it's going to the Panther Pond, but
Yeah.
laterally, it's gonna stay in the property.
Yeah, so the contours that we have, everything is draining towards the pond. And this area naturally today is collecting stormwater and it's running down this direction. So it seemed like a natural location to design this. And that will be deed restricted forested buffer and a stormwater easement area. So
Fortunately, it worked out that way for you, it's right where you want it.
Well,
Yeah.
they positioned it such that they can take advantage of that. That's why they wanted to pull the hammerhead.
Yeah,
back
that's
further.
why the hammerhead is a little farther.
Do we have any additional questions? At this time, I'd like to open, you can have a seat, just hang out right there. I want to open the meeting to public comment. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this plan?
I'd like to make just one comment,
Sure.
and probably everyone.
You have to state your name. Can we just now talk in here?
Well, I was gonna say,
Well,
no, I've got a
he can
lapel,
still
I have a
have to-
lapel
He
mic.
can, but you can't. You have to
He
go
has
to
a
the
lavalier
I got
mic
a-
on.
Oh, okay, I see.
I have, I rate tonight.
He's wired.
This new technology, you're gonna have to get used to it. But anyway, no, I've been going on, this has been going on for a long, long time. We bought the land many, many years ago before all this changed. And this is the final culmination of hopefully everything that's going on. So I'd like to thank you for everything going on. We've worked with Jim, we worked with Chris before Scott came on board. And we tried to do everything we could, and it just seems though there was one thing after another, after another, after another. But this looked like the best deal, so I hope everybody appreciates it, and we really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'd like to close the public hearing, return to the board. I also, before we start diving into some things that we're just required to do, would like to thank Scott and Jim for the tremendous analysis. I know this was a lot of work. I'm sure back when the property was first purchased, the book wasn't this thick, right? I'm sure. So on recommendation from staff, one of the things that we need to do is just to go through certain sections of the ordinance and just read them out in public. We'll identify waivers as we go. Is that
I would
the-
do waivers first in this case.
Okay.
Just so then you can go into the standard, because if you don't pass the waiver, then the standard doesn't
Yeah, it
quite
doesn't
apply.
really matter. So what we have, if I understand it correctly, is a waiver just for the sighting distance of the terminus.
Correct.
We have a waiver for the upper portion of the road, reduction in shoulder from 3 to 2 feet, correct?
Correct.
And there was one more, help me out.
That was it.
That was it, those two. So let's take those separately. So the first thing that we're being asked to consider to waive is that because they're impacting the upper part of Cedar Way, and they're doing improvement work up there, the shoulder is not to standard, it's a foot short. So that's the first one on the table for discussion. So I'd like to open that to board discussion. Any discussion? You guys are just full of it today.
Well, does that affect anything as far as public safety or anything?
I think that one of the commitments that's being made is particularly in that section of the road, that they are going to clear back some of that vegetation so the sight lines are a lot better. I think in actuality, it's going to improve the safety of the upper portion of this lane, I guess you call it.
In reality, when they get done clearing the vegetation and even with the 2-foot shoulders, I think you'll find that that first section from Malibu to Sloan Cove may be actually wider than sections of Sloan Cove Road itself.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature. I mean, everything's just kind of grown in on the gravel shoulders. There's evidence that there's gravel there. There's no really low vegetation growing. It's just the old birch trees and poplar trees that have come up on the shoulders that have been
They
maintained.
sprout quickly, don't
So
they?
they're going to go back. They'll do a little bit of grading up there just to reinforce those shoulders and gain back the necessary width. I mean, we're going to have 20 feet of travel with 2-foot shoulders, which is more than sufficient for most private roads that we have in town.
Yes. So, do we have any other discussion or comment before I entertain a motion on this particular waiver? No. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept for the waiver with regards to the shoulder being decreased by 1 foot to 2 foot.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Greg seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, on to number 2. Same approach. All that's being suggested here is, I can't remember the number of feet,
It's
but.
supposed to be 50 feet back from the end of the terminus is where the terminus, or the point of tangency for the hammerhead itself.
Right.
Due to the lot configuration and the way George is computing frontage, they wanted to move it back. Moving it back does not hurt us anything with fire equipment. It actually helps a little bit. The 50-foot is a little bit tight in some
Yeah.
cases. Moving it back doesn't hurt at all. Again, we're only accessing 3 lots down there. So it does give them ample room to back an ambulance or a fire truck and turn around per our standards.
So, and the other thing that I've noticed is that by doing it in the way that's being done, it's also going to help water runoff into the forested buffer. So there's an added benefit to that particular design. So, do we have any questions or further discussion before we move? No, may I have a motion to the floor, please?
I'll move that we allow the applicant to the hammerhead 55 feet from the terminus instead of 50 feet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
What you say for a distance again?
The distance isn't correct.
That's 100, it's actually back 135, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong number.
It's all right.
What
Just,
is the number I use?
the distance on the plan shows 135 feet to the
Okay.
center line of the hammerhead, roughly, plus or minus
I'll amend my motion to say 135
35.
feet.
Okay, and we had a second made, properly made. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, now we have to get to the business, Staff has recommended that we do this in 3 steps, if you will.
Yeah, we get all 3 on this one. We get private road, site plan, and shoreline zoning.
Right.
So you
we-
can do this one of two ways. We've done the waivers, unless there's a condition attached to a technical issue, you could take them in a lump sum.
Okay, okay.
You might just go through and get a Gallup poll and then just, if one
Yeah.
has a conversation because of a condition or something, you can attach that one
Okay.
and then come back and just
Come back and move
and
it all.
move
as
it
a
all
big-
in one motion.
one big- I like that.
So you'd have essentially you'd have three motions with this, four. You'd have one for private road, one for site plan, and one for shoreline zoning, and then one for the whole final thing.
Okay. So, so the first set of things we need to look at is section 4.2 of the street ordinance, correct? A to L. And again, staff has done a wonderful job with this. That is on page 5 of 19 in the street ordinance, correct? Am I good there, Jim?
I'm digging 5 of 19.
That would be our street ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so all we need to do is to go through these real quickly. I would like, and again, in this particular case, that what we want to do is also look into some of the comments and items that have been raised. I assume you have a copy of the planner memo, so this is not news. Okay, because our normal approach would be, as long as we understand each other, that these will be notes that must be on the plan before we would sign, correct? Okay. Am I on the right path there, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. So in the first section, I would say A, B, and C, all those conditions, date, scale, magnitude, true north, all that stuff's all done.
Correct.
Intersection, we've got that.
Yes.
C, roadway and right-of-way limits, edge of pavement, edge of shoulder, that's all contained in the diagram. So A, B, and C we're good with, right, guys?
We are.
D, kind, size, location, material profile, and cross-sections of existing and proposed drainage pipes, culverts, structures. Those were provided in detail, if I'm not mistaken,
Right.
in this report.
Yes, you do have that. You have actually two different cross.
Two different cross-sections, up
Correct.
and down,
Yep.
upper and lower. So I would deem D complete. E, complete curve data shall be indicated for all horizontal and vertical curves. I think we have that correct. It's on the plans itself.
Yes.
So E, I would consider complete. Guys, stop me if I get anywhere you disagree with. Turning radii of all intersections. The only intersection we really are concerned with here is the terminus. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's really no turning, so that's not applicable. Centerline gradients. I think those are shown on the detail.
You have it on the, I believe there's a plan profile.
Yes, it's in here.
C2.
2O.
Yep. Centerline has been given to us, so that is considered complete. H, locations of all existing and proposed overhead and underground utilities, including but not limited to water, sewer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That would be forthcoming as we move towards lot development, I would assume, correct, Jim?
Yes.
So that is not applicable at this time. A soil erosion and sedimentation control plan and requirements with Article 5, Section 2.B17 of the subdivision regulations. I think we're going to be looking at those in just a minute. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
So that one, within this context, is, I guess, in essence, deferred to the review of the subdivision section?
Correct, which also kind of comes all the way back around to site
It does,
plan.
it's a big
It's
circle.
a big circle.
So what we're going to say is this is deferred to subdivision.
Yeah, and in my memo, I suggested a waiver on some of that stormwater, but I think in this case, it's actually not necessarily a waiver, but a modification to the review. So you don't need to make a formal vote, as long as you accept their process.
Correct. Okay, so we're in good shape there, correct?
Yep.
Again, this is the biggie for me anyway. Streets to be located within the watershed of a great pond. A phosphorus impact plan is further described in Article 9, Section 14 of the subdivision regulations. That has been provided. The calculations have been done, assuming normal formulas, et cetera, for the new section, which is what we're here for today. The extension. Do we have any issues or questions with that? Yeah, because we're again focusing on an altered portion, not the entire, all the way to Stone Grove.
Right, and that is consistent with the way we've been handling these street extensions, is the piece that is basically, I'll call it grandfather, we have not addressed, but for anything we modify or build new, we've requested the applicant address the phosphorus standard.
Right, and that is documented complete with tables and assumptions in this very nice document. So that one would be considered complete. This is an expansion, so we're talking about for a new private street or expansion of an existing street that is to remain private. The applicant should include a plan setting forth how the street and associated drainage structures and required buffers and stormwater management facilities are to be maintained. Responsibility for street maintenance be assigned to a lot owners association or to lot owners in common through provisions included in the deed for all lots that utilize the private street for access. The applicant shall submit appropriate legal documentation such as proposed homeowners association documents or proposed deed covenants for board review. This documentation must address specific maintenance activities such as summer and winter maintenance, long-term improvements, emergency repairs, and include a mechanism to generate funds to pay for such work. The documentation shall be notarized and referenced on the approved plans. The draft document has been submitted, and it's suggested that it be made a requirement, a note on the plans, that it must be executed before it can be signed the final Mylars, correct?
Correct.
You good with that? Yeah? So that would be a condition.
The
That-
only other, I'm sorry.
Go
The
ahead,
only-
Jim.
The
Go
only
ahead.
other condition I had, or request I had was, again, because we're not really hugely modifying, but I just requested to see what and maybe they gave it to me and I missed it, was the site distance
I did not see that. It's,
of Cedar Lane.
mhm.
I know it's only 15 miles now, so the site distance isn't huge down there, but I just wanted it kind of documented on the plan.
If you look at Jim's memo, it's number 9 under that, so we would just get a note on the measured site distance that shouldn't take from time. Okay. How are we with the road depth and base, Jim? We have cross sections.
Yes, and I believe with the design as shown, we'll have adequate depths and protections for the private road.
Okay.
Actually, I think it may be actually a little bit deeper than what we require.
Okay. So let's just make, you've made notes of the conditions that we've talked about as we've gone through, I hope?
Yeah, in the end, I think I've got some general conditions.
Yes. The legal agreement really takes care of a huge chunk of 2 of them. We've approved the waiver. The cross sections we feel are okay at this point, right? If constructed in accordance with the plans presented. That would take care of your number 3 and number 10 in your memo. Because that's the road base and these are the cross sections, so it's kind of all in the sandwich.
Right.
Yeah? We've provided a voted waiver for the shoulder width. In this document, the requirements, et cetera, for future installed culverts are in this document. We would not be addressing that until such time as someone comes forward with a building permit, is that correct?
State that again.
Okay, one of the issues that you raised in your memo, how to address engineering requirements for culvert placements and stormwater management. Again, we have the overall plan.
Right.
And the recommendation minimums for culverts under driveways, et cetera. So they're two separate issues, right?
Correct.
Correct. So the standards in the plan would be referring back to at such time as we move forward and say a buildable, somebody's gonna build down there.
Right.
Because that all, to make that work.
Right.
Are you guys following me? I know I'm jumping all over the place. Okay. Okay, so that brings us through the subdivision,
Well, private road.
street ordinance, yeah, the private road. Yeah,
I think going back on one was the soils data. I think at least on the new section that they're going to be constructing, we will, if they're going to utilize that existing base, we'll want, as a condition, we'll just want to have a few test pits to verify.
okay,
I mean, they're rebuilding it, but they have to build it to the standard, but if they intend to use the existing base, we'll just have to have a test pit to verify material and depths.
okay. Condition, a note. All right, so that brings us through that portion. So we've addressed each of the areas in terms of the ordinance as either complete, non-applicable, a waiver, or a note on the planning.
On utilities, originally, there was a power line that was kind of crossing over. Is that going to be relocated, or are you going to get a separate utility easement from CMP?
We're planning to relocate that so it can be within the right of way.
Okay.
The proposed right of way.
Is that on the,
I did not see it on
I believe
any,
it's mentioned in the text.
was it mentioned?
Yeah, it
It was
was,
encouraged
Jim
somehow.
drew attention to it, and
Okay.
that's something that we could definitely relocate it. It's not on the plans that were
Yeah, I didn't
submitted
see
to
it,
everybody,
yeah.
but,
Okay,
I mean,
so,
we're happy to submit a plan to Jim so that he can confirm that.
we can just make it a note as a condition, just to,
okay.
it's easier to do that, then we can deal with it administratively.
Okay, that works for us.
Okay. So the next section that we need to go through would be shoreline zoning approval criteria. And that would be start on page 100 of 140 and oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. I did prepare, really, I did.
We have too many ordinances.
Yeah.
I know.
I did site plan next in your memo,
Yeah.
Okay, site plan next?
which is Article 10, Section E, criteria of standards, and they're all outlined in the memo, so you don't have to go to
Oh,
that
okay,
page,
all right.
because I can never find it either.
I know, I always get between land use and, okay. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go into section 4. I'm sorry, I did that, to the next section. So now we're gonna do site plan review, and submission requirements, Article 10D. The following items need to be, okay, never mind that, okay. Number A, I'm sorry. All the items are not there, Jim, on your memo. You're skipping a lot of them. What you've done for us is
That's the
giving us-
criteria for, I'm looking at the criteria.
Give me a page.
I knew you were gonna ask that.
Is it land use?
Yep.
No, criteria.
It's under site plan.
Criteria and standards, yeah, I got that. Okay. The items above, survey, topographic, item 7, 9, 10, 14.
94. Criteria and standards, starts on 90, I had flag too. 94, you have A through K.
Okay. So preservation of landscaping, preserved in its natural state insofar as practicable by minimizing tree and soil removal, retaining existing vegetation where desirable, and keeping any grade changes in character with the general appearance of neighboring areas. Again, at this point, I think that that standard has been met They're actually making an effort to leave forested buffer. And our waiver doesn't require them to cut down any more trees on the upper section. So I think that standard has been met. Are we in agreement on that? Yes. Relation of proposed buildings, that's not applicable. So the standard is met. Vehicular access,
Really, all you have there is the hammerhead design, and
exactly.
you've already waived that and found that
Right.
acceptable.
So that condition has been met as far as the overall plan being accepted. Parking and circulation, it's not applicable. Surface water drainage. Again, we've addressed that in the subdivision section. Jim, do you want to walk us through your comments on this next section? Must be approved by us, obviously. Street ordinance and site plan submission requirements, the planning board, unless they can after Malibu Lane, which I thought.
Yeah, you've already kind of discussed that.
We kind of discussed that.
Yeah, you've got kind of a modified review. You're not requiring them to do phosphorus control on the whole entire length of Cedar Lane. You're just asking for on the piece that they're improving.
Right.
So it's
And we
it's
kinda
not really a
went through
waiver, it's
that.
more of a modified approach.
Correct, and we kind of discussed that earlier in the subdivision. We just talked a little bit about utilities. We're going to be making a note on that plan. There are no special features, so that is not applicable. Exterior lighting, there's no proposed lighting, that is not applicable. Emergency vehicle access, we have done in terms of road width and the terminus, so that standard has been met. Landscaping, there's no formal landscaping plan, not applicable, so the standard has been met. Other considerations, I think we're all set on that. There really are no other considerations, are there, Jim?
No, I don't
Other
think
than
so.
it's very complicated. All right. So again, it's just, it kind of, it's doing one of these. So the last bit of formal stuff that we need to discuss is the land use ordinance, correct, Jim?
Shoreline zoning,
Shoreline zoning, yeah.
they get the trifecta.
Yeah, they sure did. So what page, Jim?
That is on page 60 of 70 of the shoreline
Way
zoning.
at the back.
You have 9 criteria there. There are spelled out on they're simply duplicated on my memo.
Okay, so let's start at the top. We're in 16D. Pursuant to that section, again, this is why we're doing one of these. Number 1, will maintain safe and healthful conditions. Again, provided all of the information that is provided, I would say that the condition is met. When we do the emergency vehicles, the road width, we're all good. Will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. Again, they've proposed a phosphorus control plan. They've proposed maintenance to the upper portion of the road, which they didn't have to make it better. So I think we're in really good shape. Supporting calculations were contained in this engineering report. Are we good with that? Do you guys feel the
Yep.
condition is met? Okay. Jim, jump in whenever you want. Will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. At this time, that's not applicable. We'll be talking to somebody else about that down the road a bit. Yeah. Number 4, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wild habitat. Again, with the wooded buffer, the erosion control measures, we feel there's no adverse impacts. I think they've done a good job with that. Are we in agreement? I'm seeing nods. You could also go, So I don't have to keep doing that, okay? Will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland waters. Due to the design, there's no impact on the shoreline cover. Are we in agreement on that?
Agreement.
So that is, I guess not, we have no concern with it. Will protect archaeological and historical resources as designated in the comprehensive plan. Nothing known, so that one is not part of our discussion. Number 7, will not adversely affect existing commercial fishing or marine activities. You gonna do that? Yeah, no? Okay. I don't think that I don't think
He has
that
a laundromat,
applies.
he's gonna open up a bait shop next.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use. We're not within a great floodplain. Will not have an adverse impact, so we're okay there. Yeah, yeah?
Okay, there.
I need at least a head nod there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is in conformance with the provision of section 15 land use standards. It does conform to the minor site plan and private street requirements. We've gone through all of that. Okay, so now we've gone through the 3 sections of the ordinances that we needed to at least go over in public and make sure we're all on the same page. I think we really covered everything way back at the beginning under subdivision, all right? We do have a couple other general notes, as you notice, that Jim has brought up. That the overall roadway plan note states that there are no wetlands out there. But after a walk by staff, they did observe that there were some wetlands.
There's some wetlands on his property, and I guess that'll come back with Scott when they come in for building permit.
Okay,
Or if there's any wetland permits required, or setbacks for septic or anything like that. They'll deal with that at building permit.
okay. And the one I think we've talked back and forth a little bit about is that the legal agreement must be executed by all parties and added to the plan. And I think we want to voice unanimity, and we will not be signing that until that document is executed.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to leave tonight with an approved
We
plan.
did talk to our legal counsel about that, and that's how they advised us, is that you can approve it with the condition, but you will not sign it or execute it until you have proof that it has been executed with the necessary parties.
Okay. And then the one last comment from staff is we need to have Cedar Lane survey monumented at Sloan's Cove Road in the intersection of Malibu Lane.
Yeah, we just need some pins. I don't think there's not a whole lot out there right at this point. I know Malibu's got some, but it'd be good to have something at the beginning and at the end to
Yeah. Okay,
tie
so
this
we'll make
whole right
that-
away together.
Put that on the plan, please, as a
You
condition.
don't have to use concrete monuments, pins are sufficient.
Pins are sufficient for private. For town roads, we'd require monuments.
Okay, so I would like to do 2 things. I think,
Do you want me, there was a couple other conditions. Do you want to
Yes,
do those
go.
now?
Yes,
Or do you
please.
want, okay,
And
I
then we'll do
had
this.
a condition to do the test pits to verify materials and depths if they plan on using those as part of the road construction. And execution of the homeowners association as well. I know you've got the right-of-way agreement, but then you'll also have to do the homeowners association. And then the final one was to add a note to relocate the existing CMP pole such that it stays within the right-of-way. Oh, one more. Site distance.
site distance,
Site distance from Sloan Cove Road and intersection with Cedar Lane.
pins.
To be located on, to be shown on the plan.
Okay, so actually I showed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conditions and 2 waivers. The waivers are already done, so we need to go back to that. So what I'd like to do now is to develop a motion to accept the plan as complete with conditions.
Well, you can just deem it complete, you don't need to add the conditions. I mean, the idea is that they've submitted the necessary information, so.
Okay, and we have the notes. I don't need that as part of the motion?
For the completeness, no.
No.
Just
Okay,
you
so
deem
let's
you
make
have
it
enough
complete,
information.
and then we'll do a second motion to add all the stuff.
Right.
Is that okay? Yeah. So, can I have a motion to accept the private way extension of Cedar Lane as complete?
So moved.
Do I have a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. So now, we can say, we're not gonna do this.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna say, we're gonna move on to making a motion for was it acceptance of the plans or prior to giving permission to move forward?
You can make that prior to, before you sign it, as an actual condition.
Okay.
You need to add the conditions to either the private road, the site plan, one of those two is what I would do, and then the other one kind of captures it.
Okay.
Because I think if you do it to site plan, the shoreline zone comes back and is one of the requirements is that they met the conditions of the site plan ordinance, so I would make any conditions part of the site plan review.
Okay.
So you'll have site plan approval motion, private road approval motion, and then shoreline zoning approval motion. So you got 3 motions to make. And the site plan one will have the conditions.
Okay. So why don't we start with that? I moved.
Comes the so moved.
So moved, yeah. Mary, you got all that?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's make
she
it a
does
little
on
easier
tape.
for Mary. So, I move to accept the site plan for the Cedar
Lane extension.
Cedar Lane extension with the following conditions. Site distance for the entire expanse, beginning to end, that test pits and results be provided, that the homeowner agreement is executed, that utility relocation,
Yeah.
that pins be placed, do I have a second or of
You
that
got
motion?
one more, you
What?
have to have, as a condition, that prior to the board signing the plan, that they will execute the right-of-way agreement
Oh, that's right.
with the necessary parties.
And the execution of the right-of-way agreement,
So moved.
do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous.
Now they go fast.
Okay.
I promise, George.
Because we don't have all the stuff, you know, so the second one would be the private way extension? Is that what we call it?
I think you
I
call it
don't have the
private
language.
street. Technical term is private street.
Okay, acceptance of the private street, known as the Cedar Lane extension, I guess.
It's still Cedar Lane under,
Cedar Lane.
it'll be Cedar Lane. And actually, one of the things we can quickly discuss is when they did Malibu originally, that was Cedar Lane Extension, and when they did Malibu, they renamed that. So basically now for 911 purposes, Cedar Lane is down here
Okay,
and continues through to Yazback.
okay. Okay, so, the motion to be entertained is that we accept the private extension of Cedar Lane. Go so
moved.
So moved over here. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? And last but not least,
It meets all the applicable requirements of the shoreline zone.
the motion meets, the motion on the floor would be that the Cedar Lane extension meets all applicable requirements of the shoreline zoning ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
There you go.
We're done. Go forth you and do more paperwork. And again, thanks to staff for, I know this is a lot of stuff to wade through, but we got there, eh?
Thank you.
Thank you,
For your time
thank you.
tonight. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for the extra care on the water. Okay. Next on our agenda, I can find it. Here, thank you. Next on our agenda, applicant is David Baker. We're talking a request for amendment to subdivision of the Panther View Ridge subdivision. And you are? Okay. Dustin Rome. Oh, you've got a mic right there. Nobody gave me the new directions for all this AV stuff.
I know. They're all hooked. They're all hooked. Hook, line, and sinker.
My name is Dustin Roman, I'm a civil engineer with DM Roman Consulting Engineer, and I'm here tonight to present a request, or begin the discussions with a request from the workshop for an amendment to the Panther View Ridge subdivision project. This plan I've got in front of you here is the plan that was approved by the planning board in 1999. The project included the creation of 8 lots for single-family use, all utilizing the existing frontage on Meadow Road. So the one that we've got highlighted here is lot number 4, and that's the lot that we're discussing for an amendment. At the time, there was a 60-foot right-of-way which was dedicated in between lots 3 and 4. There was also a portion of that right-of-way which was designed to serve as a shared driveway for 3 and 4. The right-of-way was intended to provide access to remaining land of Alfred Mann in the back. The applicant for this project was one of the original developers of this subdivision, so they've been along. They've actually they've lived in this house here, and they currently live on basically on the other side of the hill now. And the current owners of this property. As well, the applicant is a member of that organization as well, so there's some continuity there. At the time, I went through the files. I didn't see anything specific which talked about the design of any roadway in that 60-foot right-of-way. It was really just to provide some connectivity to that back piece. So this plan shows what we're intending to do. The 2 green parcels here, light and dark green, is what's currently lot 4 on that plan. The area in blue is that existing 60-foot right-of-way. It's about 600 feet back to the center of the lot. It's about 750 all the way back to the rear part of the lot here. The gas pipeline runs down through the middle here. There's a pole line as well, but it runs behind all the properties. So this is kind of a natural divide. The other homes are all on the Meadow Road side of the pipeline. The one exception here is this house, which was they had built out this roadway to a 15-foot wide paved road. They gave it a street name, Alfred Mann Drive. There's currently 2 houses which utilize it for access, and they also have Alfred Mann Drive addresses. So this existing dwelling on lot 4, as well as the dwelling back here on lot 3, are the 2 dwellings that use Alfred Mann Drive. Both have addresses. So our proposal is to divide the lot and create one additional lot from what is lot 4. And the reason that, or one of the reasons that this is an option that we're considering, is due to the town's change in zoning from this area. So it used to be in I believe it was VR2 at the time, which required 3-acre zoning. So the lots were designed based on that criteria. This area currently is all VR zoning. I don't know that VR2 exists anymore, so I think that's all been changed. So under the VR zoning, minimum lot size 40,000 square feet, 100 feet of road frontage. So we're using that criteria as making this backland here potentially eligible for meeting the zoning requirements. So one of the big things we looked at to determine the viability of this project and whether it made sense was just looking at the existing condition of Alfred Mann Drive. As I said, it's currently paved 15 feet wide, ranges between 14 and 15 as it comes through here. There's some sections here that are 14, and then it widens out a little bit down and through here. So currently, I believe the standards for a private way serving fewer than 4 residences is 12-foot wide travel lane with 2-foot shoulders, which is a 16-foot wide total road surface. So in this case, we've got 15 feet of pavement, and we do have some additional shoulder width beyond that. It certainly exceeds 6 inches, but in many cases it's much wider than that. You can see here in the light gray where we've got extra gravel that basically a turnout here for a kind of a turnaround, and then this road extends out into the remaining lane to the back. We're fairly confident through our just visual analysis, measuring out the roadways, that it does meet that the width standard. What we do at this stage in the game, when we look at gravel depths, we haven't gotten to the point where we've dug up samples or anything like that. We can see in a couple areas, which is, you know, pretty common in areas like this, where some bigger rocks have kind of made their way up through the pavement. We've seen where they've come through and they've cut out those sections of pavement, regraded it, repaved those areas. So there's been a constant commitment to keep this roadway in really good shape. It's not one that's deteriorated over the years in the last 25 years, and no one's ever gone back and looked at it. You can see a couple of sections where they've gone through and made these repairs, where some rocks have kind of tried to make their way up through. So currently it's in really great shape. This area right here, we do have a section where the driveway kind of comes out of that existing 60-foot wide right-of-way. The reason for that is pretty evident when you go out to the site and look at it. The way that the grades come down here and where the pipeline crosses, basically the road just comes right to the edge of where you've got basically a slope that kind of comes down there, and then you've got the road sits perched up above the land on this side. So it's kind of right in next to a slope that comes down, and you can see when they're putting that road in, when it was just intended to serve the one lot. So when this was built, it was to access this property, so there certainly was no concern on their part to encroach on their own land slightly to be able to kind of make their way around that little hill. So that's one point we're happy to talk to the board about. If there is some concern about it, we can talk about remedies and how we might go about that. But again, if you look at it today, you can see why it was done the way it was. The location where we're looking to enter the lot is actually on a high point of the road here, so it really isn't even going to require a driveway culvert. Basically, there's a culvert that goes underneath this gravel section of roadway here, and then there's another culvert right here which goes under the paved driveway, and that sends drainage kind of down in this direction. Drainage from the lot itself drains back here. That the contours are difficult to see with this darker green color, but they basically kind of loop around in a horseshoe like this for the contours. So drainage kind of gets pulled to the middle of the site here, and then it kind of drains out this way. Slopes on the site are relatively modest. They're about 8% slopes or so. So there's with 1.6 acres that we're proposing to divide off here. In a nice rectangular shape, plenty of land suitable to site a house. One of the comments that Jim had raised was just about wetlands on the property. I did walk around a little bit. I am going to have somebody take a look at the site just to be sure. Some sites you can walk through and just clearly see there are no wetlands. In this area where we do have drainage, it kind of pulls to the middle a little bit. You can just see some staining on the leaves and stuff, so we are going to get that checked just so it's not a question that the board has to think about. Septic suitability is one that we're not too concerned about, but we'll have somebody on site dig a test pit and show that we've got adequate soils there. That was the extent of what we were looking to do at this phase, but if the board would like us to take it beyond that and actually get more of a design, we're happy to do that. I think the test pit should be suitable, but again, we'd like some direction for you here tonight so that when we come back, we make sure we give you all the information you need to be able to run to your decision. One of the things that we can see would be a benefit to the site would be a kind of a formal turnaround at the end of this roadway. Again, it was shown as a 60-foot right-of-way to access the rear land, so there really wasn't any, at the time it was set up, there wasn't any intent for this to be a short little dead-end road that required a turnaround. But for all intents and purposes today, we're now talking about a third house on this road, which essentially will function as a dead end to this point. So I think it certainly makes sense at this point to incorporate a hammerhead turnaround. So we'll design one on our property here and construct it as part of the lot development. Jim and I talked a little bit about stormwater management and what the ordinance requirements and expectations are. For the original subdivision, what they did is basically sited the houses back. Panther Pond is on the other side of the road, so we are beyond the 600-foot shoreline zone, but certainly within close proximity to the lake and have a sensitivity to it, so we understand we need to do our part if we're going to be doing further development to treat the stormwater and provide erosion controls on the site. So again, everything kind of drains in this direction. We're not sending any water towards the road that's going to be just going straight down towards the lake. It's going to kind of make its way around this way. And as I said before, with the pipeline being here, the backs of all of these lots are still remain wooded. You can see here, basically the drainage pattern for this lot number 4 kind of comes down like this and then makes its way down this way. So you've got, we will provide some on-site reservation of buffers, but you can see that once stormwater actually leaves the site, kind of leaves it here, makes its way down this way. There's lots and lots of opportunity here where all the development is taking place on this side of the pole line, where the phosphorus is going to be removed just through natural drainage patterns that exist out there today. So I think that's a kind of a summary of where we're at right now. Would love to hear your feedback and things that you'd like to see us elaborate more on when we come back with our full application, and we'll turn it over to you for some questions.
Okay, so I think we'll just open it up. Do you have any direct questions for our guests?
If you don't mind, can I step in real quick?
Go ahead.
This question will come up on this application, and the next one is under the phosphorus ordinance. And really and truly, we can only impose phosphorus control when they're within 600 feet of the resource or the
Right.
watershed. In this case, you're outside 600. The weird part is if it were site plan, we could, but under subdivision, we don't have that section. But we are requesting that each of these applicants, this one and the one that follow, do their best to, incorporate some kind of measures for stormwater quality.
Right.
And then I think they're both going to abide by that to an extent, but I don't think both of them probably won't go to the expense of computing that, but I think if we can see, am I on? Oh, okay. If we can at least see where the measure would take place, and in like this case, if the drainage goes in this direction and they can utilize that as a buffer, that would be beneficial, and I think we can support that. This is the one piece that I think we're having a little bit of,
Right.
the right-of-way is not within or is very close to the edge of the right-of-way. It is a private right-of-way. We don't require it to be necessarily centered, but with that, any improvements need to be within the right-of-way. So I think that's a discussion the board might want to have is, does the applicant have a way to improve that or kick that over a little bit so that it's in the right-of-way, or is there any way they can extend the right-of-way to slide over and so the blue is between the gray and the white here? And then the terminus, and I think we're talking about a hammerhead, correct, in here? So I think with all that, we'll be there. One thing I will add that we didn't get comments from the fire department. I know on the one that'll precede this, there was some comments we did receive about putting sprinklers in or maybe a cistern depending on the number of units. So
Right.
Dustin, you may want to reach out to Wayne Jones, who's the new fire inspector for the town since we've had the unfortunate passing of David Maines. He will be conducting those, so you might want to reach out to him to see what the fire department may want. I know on the one after this, they've given them a few options of what to do.
Right. Right.
And I think sprinklers were actually, even back in '99, that was a condition of the subdivision approval for
Okay.
everything that was done to date, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one other thing too, is that we'll need to take a look at all the conditions that were on the original subdivision plan,
Correct.
because they will apply to this lot. So when you do put together that amended plan, just make sure you incorporate all of the conditions and waivers and everything that were on the original plan.
Because one of the things we're trying to, very hard to do is to carry those forward in all documentation, so that there's continuity if it ever comes back again. I would just say, do we have any general comments? I don't see that the board is adverse to the concept. With the rezoning in that particular area, it does open up the other side of the road for development. So, is there any comments about that? Does the board have any opinion on that? I mean, we're taking these old 3-acre zone lots down, but it's allowable in that particular zone.
No problem with that.
No?
No, and you, I mean, you kinda, like you said, you got natural separation with the pipeline, so.
Exactly.
You know, it's not like you're shaving off 40,000 square feet to fit a home in here. You're kinda splitting the lot almost evenly.
Yeah.
The other thing too, Dustin, we'll just need to, because it is a private road now, same thing as the last one, site distance out on 121. It's straight, I think, it's pretty straight through there.
But I think in general, you find it supportive of the concept. There's just a lot of homework that needs to be done, so, when you get to the applicant stage, I think you kind of heard everything we went through just a little bit ago, and a lot of that same stuff is going to be applying. We have to get, unfortunately, things are kind of scattered when we're talking about this kind of stuff, so. But I think, the other thing we may consider is because of the odd placement, right at the edge of that right-of-way, it might be worth a site visit just to get a feel of what he's talking about out there in terms of the slopes and how it was originally constructed. And just something for thought, and we don't have to schedule it right now, but.
Well, I would, if you want to do a sidewalk, I would advise doing it now, because with these private roads, they're typically one meeting.
Right.
So it'd be beneficial to have that information maybe now, prior to them submitting anything.
Yeah, see, my tendency would be to push for that road to be bumped back into the right-of-way so that, 10 years from now, when they're having a big old hoo-ha over the fact that it's infringing on somebody else,
Well,
another
that's
development.
contained by the pipeline, is that correct? Or is
Well,
it
the
going
pipeline
the other
goes this way, and maybe one thing that I could offer is, maybe we can demonstrate that we meet the road standard within the right-of-way, rather than necessarily cutting out, because I'd hate to go through the expense of just removing pavement to bring it in the right-of-way.
Right.
Perhaps maybe we just demonstrate that we've got enough room inside the right-of-way
Okay.
to travel, and if it's a little wider than the road standard, then everyone
That's good.
benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like the last one too, especially in that area there, have it pinned so we can see where the actual right-of-way is.
And I'll have to see too where, because we do have pins out here now, so
Yeah.
all these pins that are there are found pins. And I'll have to see if perhaps when they did this, if this is a pile of ledge, that might have been the reason why they went around, just because of blasting within proximity of the pipeline and all that.
Well,
So-
and when you cross the pipeline, as we know, that's another whole can of worms that
Yeah.
if you relocate or do any other work there, you gotta deal with them.
And this is like I said, this was the only crossing of the pipeline. These other lots going through there are on the roadside.
Well, how does the board feel about that? Do you want to go see it, or do you think that he can present a reasonable approach with his application?
I'd be fine with seeing it on paper once it comes back.
Paper good enough? And paper's good enough? Okay.
I think so.
I'll submit some nice pictures of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I
And-
think-
And we rely on staff, you'll be checking it out too,
Right.
so.
And I think, again, if it is paved and in a stable surface, then that's more desirable than to have it gravel or any.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that comes up with a lot of these things is who's gonna maintain this? I know you say it's being well maintained, but now we're
Yeah.
adding people. how is the road gonna be maintained?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, that'll all be
and we'll
firmed
have
up in
to-
our application. It'll be
Okay.
crystal clear what's gonna happen.
Okay.
And,
Road associations are so much fun.
Well, we do our best to get them established, but then what happens afterwards is out
We
of
should,
our
we
purview.
should subject you to annual meetings, that's what we should do. Any other discussion on this? You know, I'm hearing the board is generally supportive of where you're
Justin, is
going.
there utilities up through there?
There's overhead power, I believe, that runs up the road.
Okay.
And there's actually, there's a lot, really nice like granite posts with private lights that run
Oh.
all the way down the road.
Oh, nice.
With little gardens and trees, and I mean, it's very well maintained, especially this stretch from the pipeline all the way back here. Again, there's a granite post with lights.
So who would be, well, it'd have to be prorated, I guess, how would the homeowners association would be, because you got the one owner that's already has access in the back, and this one would probably share expenses, and then the front one would somehow be prorated, because obviously he doesn't use the whole road, but I'll let you figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's 700 feet of road, and I suspect where they're taking it in good shape. I mean, we'll have it all figured out, but I suspect it would be a kind of a three-way split.
Yeah, I think right in that gray area, let's see if I can hit it, right in there would be a good spot for the turnaround, because it would give you access to all of them.
Yep, and that's the high spot in the road, so that would make it so we wouldn't have to culvert, because the drainage is a drainage divide here and here, and that would just basically send the drainage right that way. So
Okay,
it
and
makes
you've
a lot
got-
of sense.
And you got two ways to do that. You can either make the hammerhead part of the right-of-way, or you can make it an actual easement. So
Yeah.
we'll leave that option up to you, how you want to do that.
Yeah, we've got plenty of land. We're well above the minimum lot size, so if we had to put some more in the right of way, and again, the applicant is the owner of the right of way, they just own it under their investment
Yeah, right.
company on the abutting piece, so.
Okay,
Good, well, I appreciate all the feedback, thank you.
thank you. Again, thanks staff for taking the time on this one. Okay, we'll move to the next agenda item. Thank you, Patricia. Albert Frick, discussion regarding phosphorus control matters, the extension of Westview Drive for development of proposed 3 lots beyond Westview Estate subdivision. Again, one of these oldie but goodies approved back in 1986.
Well, this one's a little different because Westview is actually a town-accepted road.
Oh, wow. Yes.
The last bastion of
Yeah.
town acceptance, I guess.
Probably the last one that was accepted.
And this one, too, is a beneficiary of the zone change.
And it does have pieces of both the previous applications, as
Yeah.
Jim suggests, yeah. So my name is Albert Frick. I'm a certified soil scientist, site evaluator, past owner and president of Albert Frick Associates. And I'm the applicant agent for this subdivision, the Frick Joint Trust. And it's located at the very end of Westview Drive. And as Jim indicated, Westview Drive was an approved subdivision back in 1986 and has a town-approved road up to the existing cul-de-sac. My wife purchased the remaining land, which is shown on this site plan. I have the aerial here that shows the existing gravelled way and the hammerhead and the existing lots that have already been developed with code enforcement permits from Jack Cooper. And subsequent to that, it was Will Cook. And then Chris Hansen followed up with this one. So they were all done with approval from the town. But what the proposed subdivision consists of is about 5.2 acres that, of the remaining vacant land. And if you look at the application, if you toggle between 2 and 7, the tabs would show the tax maps and the dates that they were developed. So everything below this was developed in 1980, in the late 1980s, the existing houses. This lot, map 8, lot 48A, was sold and developed in 2001. My wife sold it to her brother James Mancini, and it was subsequently developed. This lot, 48B, was sold to my son, Grady Frick, who developed the lot in 2006. And then this lot, which is 48C, was developed in 2010. We held title to that, myself and my wife, and my son Colin Frick built the house here, and it since has been sold. So these 3 lots are developed with single-family dwelling. The town has the vacant land as map 8, lot 48, and it includes the parcel on both sides of Westview private road, which now is a private road extension. So what we were proposing to do is develop 3 lots. This lot on the westerly side is 1.68 acres and has the required frontage. And on the opposite side, we are proposing to develop 2 lots, one of 1 acre in size, and one the other one is 2.59. And they all meet, to my understanding, the frontage and the size, and also the requirement that you have under section, Article 9, section U1A, as far as having a 100-foot circle for an adequate house site, as demonstrated. So drop in the aerial for it so you can see that a little cleaner. So that would be proposed as the three lots. And what I wanted to do is get some feedback from you with regards to phosphorus. And Jim had just mentioned to Dustin previously, I had read Article 9, Section U5A1, that phosphorus is subject to lots within 600 feet of a great pond or within 100 feet of a perennial stream. And this parcel is 4,400 feet from Panther Pond and about 3,000 feet to Hayden Brook, which is the closest perennial streams. So I was wanting to provide forested buffer, but because some of the previous lots have been pre-developed with no requirements, and the difficulty to provide that with the drainage, that I was proposing to cooperate in spirit, but not be subject to the phosphorus program. And that's what I wanted to get some feedback from the board with regards to that suggestion.
Well, I think, Jim, you mentioned earlier that based on the siting of these lots, that the phosphorus control plan calculations, all those good things are not required. Is that correct?
Correct, and I think in this case too, you've got a portion of that road is actually already in, it's gravel.
Yep.
So whether it's gravel or pavement, you know, it's already been built. I guess the one thing that I'll just go back real quickly on is that this lot 8 was part of the parcel to remain was part of the original Westview, I forgot what the name of it, what was it called originally? Westview
Estates.
Estates.
And not that it's anyone's fault at this point, but, you know, any amendment to that lot, because it was part of part of a subdivision, should have come back even if it was a family subdivision, just
Right.
through the formality. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna catch everything up at this point, even though these are two out parcels that have been developed. He's got them shown on here. We're only really looking at 3 lots, but
Right.
again, it's just kind of a cleanup of the whole thing.
Okay.
With regards to stormwater, he is correct. We don't really have anything in our ordinance to mandate he do phosphorus. I think what he's offering is a great start. I think the only thing we really have under the subdivision is quantity, so
Right.
we will want to make sure that, you know, again, maybe with the use of buffers, you can prove that you meet the peak rate of runoff, because that's really all we have in the subdivision ordinance for stormwater management. And you've got quite a bit of land, you know, even with the 5 lots, you've got quite a bit of land there, so with the buffers, you may be able to reach that. I just don't know. I mean, spread it out, do whatever. So that's one concern. He did get comments today from the fire chief and Mike Dustin's. There's some options for a pond, a cistern, or sprinkler systems. And like Dustin's, the one you just saw before, and I think we've already discussed that any of the conditions that were on the original subdivision plan would move
be
forward
carried
to this
over.
one. And that was the only thing we were trying to figure out is with the phosphorus. Did it require to have phosphorus? Probably in 1986? No,
Probably not.
probably not.
No,
It didn't. I mean, I think the water district came in, in the late 80s or the 90s, the Port Water District adopted the first phosphorus standard, so it was probably predated that. So we will need to see, and he's got it shown on there, septic systems for the proposed lots.
And that was another request, similar to what Dustin had suggested to you previously, is that I would request not to do the complete HHE 200 design. And I've done over 30,000 HHE 200s in 35 years. But when you do them this early, when the house configuration and the location and the driveway and all of those necessary details haven't been pre-selected,
Right.
I find that less than 5% of those are actually used when it comes time to pull a permit. And I would prefer, and we have done, is dug test pits in areas where the septic systems might be reasonably located, certified that they were suitable. We have a soil map that shows it's not just one little site, it's ample area.
And I think that's going to be more than adequate.
Yeah, I
for
think
what we're
if
doing.
we
Yeah.
can get multiple test pits on the lot like he's shown, and then a statement from him saying that with those soils, there's adequate spacing to fit a conventional
Right.
bed.
And,
We'll
you
just
know,
make that a condition of
Yeah.
approval that those be, that the actual HHE 200 be provided at the time of the building permit.
Right. I think that's just fine.
And one standard in the subdivision ordinance that we might want to consider in the future, that would be one. That one just always
Yep.
is a painstaking, expensive process.
And I have talked with Jim. I did speak to Nate White, the Public Works Director, about his preferences. And he would prefer a hammerhead as opposed to a cul-de-sac. And he suggested an area for plowing easement, so the driveways off the hammerhead wouldn't be, he'd have a place to push it, and we're all fine with that. The question comes, would you have a preference whether it's a private road or a public road?
Well,
This is a can of worms here.
yeah.
Because right now, obviously, with the cul-de-sac that's up there, the town maintains that. And it's not a true conventional cul-de-sac by any stretch of the means. And I know you can't answer this question, only the council can as far as acceptance. But I think it would benefit the lot marketing and benefit the town to make that a paved section road so that it can be maintained. I think it might be a bigger conversation with Nate, that if it doesn't, say by chance the town doesn't accept it as a public road, could we get a winter maintenance agreement over it to maintain it as a paved road?
Yeah.
You know, so you
And
wouldn't,
see, that, at this stage, you know, that's all up in the air, but it's out of our purview until
right.
a lot of those details are worked out. You know,
But I mean, if the town's gonna go up there and plow that,
then it needs to conform to,
it needs to, well, it'll need to conform to some kind of town standard, I guess, would be my.
And that leads to the these were the kind of things I needed a little input on, that the logistics as far as the design of the road.
Right.
I've talked to Walt Engineering, and the logistics, whether to design the road, of course, it has to be approved by the selectmen.
right?
If they don't want it, and we go through you with a proposed road, then we're back before you. So I was trying to get a little bit of a direction as far as if we can go forward with the subdivision based on the proposed lots, and let the road design mature and be submitted to the selectmen for consideration and come back. Is that a plan of attack here, or how would you prefer to see
Well,
that?
you know, within our purview, you know, we're gonna be looking at very specific things, not the road per se, because it already exists and the lots have correct frontage.
Right.
So, whether we have personal preferences or not is kind of irrelevant. We're not gonna require you, other than the terminus, and to document that, you know, everything's, you know, the shoulder road, you know, is good. If you want to proceed down that path on your own, you know, you don't need our approval for that at
Okay.
this stage. Do you know what I mean?
I do know, I hear it, and I was gonna talk to the existing people,
Yep.
neighbors, get their understanding of what they would like and proceed accordingly. The things that Jim mentioned about marketing and having an approved road with no association, those are all valuable pieces, of course, but
Sure.
I'm trying to,
When the town accepted that road, it might be beneficial on the next plan to, sorry, is to see what is the limits of the right-of-way that the town has accepted.
Yep.
Because if you look at the original subdivision plan that was part of the packet, it showed the nice, you know, concentric circle. However, in reality, it's just kind of an oblong. It really doesn't conform to our cul-de-sac standard. But I'd be interested to know the limits of what was town accepted shown on the plan.
yes, and that is the cul-de-sac, it encroaches on, indeed, 48A.
Okay.
And it's there. It's probably not the full circumference, but that's
Right.
what is
Okay.
currently being used.
So, you know, again, you know, it's really up to, like you said, it's up to the developer what he wants to propose.
Right.
You can't make the determination of whether the town will accept it. The only way the town will accept it, as I can say, is it will have to be paved to meet the higher town
Right.
standard.
Right.
If it's a private road, then it can be gravel, but
Right. And
but then, you know, we're still gonna have an issue that if the town plows it, when it plows it, you're gonna get plowed in, you know? So that's gonna be some coordination with Nate as to how we'll go forward with that.
Well, right now, it's been in this situation for more than 15 years. So
Yeah.
the town plows it more or less like a informal hammerhead.
Right.
You know, and everybody gets along as far as access to their driveways.
Yeah, you add 3 more people to the dance now, so.
Yeah.
No, and more. So, yeah, I hear you. I was just trying to get some feedback. So that answers logistics, town gravel road, phosphorus plan, septic designs. And I did get from Scott, I was having a little trouble with what happened with Marshall Maines, but Wayne Jones did get back to me verbally and got
Good.
his response. So we'll
So,
look at
you know, it seems like you're getting all the right players together, you're asking all the right questions. I think you're hearing no objection from the board in terms of the concept of the development. It's just a question of how do you want to get there
Right.
with the road situation.
One other piece for drainage, I don't know, you've got some wetland swales. I don't know if those swales benefit abutters, and if they do, you know, obviously it may be beneficial to put them in some kind of an easement just so that nobody can go in and disturb the natural progression of the drainage.
Yeah, I'll speak to the abutters.
Just a
but
suggestion, that's all.
We tried to lay this out using the natural drainage for as opposed to having a drainage go through the proposed lot. So they've been laid out to respect the drainage corridors for that.
Any other discussion or questions? Well, we appreciate you give us a sneak peek. And we'll look forward to talking with you again.
All right, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate the time before the board.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go into something completely different before we come back to more business. I asked that we put on the agenda tonight discussion of board officer positions. As you know, I stood for and was elected to the Budget Committee. Raymond, under home rule, is a little different than the state of Maine, which says I cannot hold a position on the Planning Board and be a voting member and be on the Budget Committee at the same time. So that's going to force me to submit my resignation. I've done some kind of unofficial chit-chatting with some of the select board. I can remain as an ex officio member without voting power. And I am technically not in violation of that statute until such time I am sworn in. I have not done that yet. So I am getting a little bit of corralling from our town clerk to show up and get sworn in. But again, that becomes something for me to handle, how I want to handle that. So what I wanted to do is throw this open. Greg is in a situation where he may or may not stay with the board. As you know, he's going to be a very busy guy dealing with the State House of Representatives. So we've got a couple of things kind of going on here. And we wanted to kind of open it up now and talk about where do we go, guys? We'd be looking for a minimum at this point. Greg thinks he'll stay on for a little bit, right? But as vice chair, his schedule does not permit him to do all the prep work and all the stuff that's necessary. I've got to tell you from my perspective, serving only a few months as chair, it's really not that much work. This meeting maybe took an hour more of my time than normal because of the interwoven ordinances that we had to review, but really I view the chair's responsibilities as just keeping the meeting orderly, organized, and moving along. Our planning staff has gone above and beyond for a number of months now, giving us exactly how to approach, each package. Their suggestions, etc. I mean, we could go off the reservation anytime we want, but they really prepare us very well prior to a meeting. So with that said, it probably takes me light times, simple stuff, 2-3 hours to prepare. A more complex one, maybe 5 hours in advance of a meeting. From the time you get the package. The other thing is that you can always flip an email out to staff, and they're very good about getting right back to you with questions and clarifications and all that kind of good stuff. So, we're really, again, representing the town of Raymond, but the experts that we have to do this job are pretty phenomenal. So I kind of wanted to ask, I know everybody else is real new. I think that, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I think Mary's had a conversation with Bob O'Neill, correct?
Yeah.
He mentioned when he was back at Christmas that he would be interested. I've spoken with his son-in-law to get his rough calendar, he's back in town, he's got a lot of things to settle with the travel and so forth. It's gonna be the end of this month, maybe the beginning of August before he's ready to jump in.
Okay.
I have talked with him since then as to whether he's serious about coming in, but I can definitely approach him.
That would be great, because, you know, Bob's
Yeah, I was just
years of
thinking
experience.
that gives the board an opportunity to transition. Obviously, Bob's got a lot of experience being a chairman before.
Absolutely.
And even if you have to leave sooner than that and Greg can stay on for another month, you know, maybe that's the opportunity. But then somebody else would have to step up to be vice chair, which is kind of a slow movement into the big chair.
So, you know, I'm kind of looking around and quite honestly, my initial reaction would be to look at Ed. Ed's had background and experience in the general field. The meeting, running the meeting part is kind of the only thing you really kind of got to get under your belt. But as I say, they give you the roadmap. You know.
You just
Some
gotta
of the
keep the train on the
elaborate-
track. That's all you can keep the train on the track. That's all.
Exactly.
The elaborate
Exactly.
motions sometimes.
And again,
hard
I
to keep straight in your
I
head.
think it's a great opportunity and discussion. I don't think anybody's looking for a decision to be made tonight, but I
Right.
think it's just, you know, going forward, people are gonna have to, the old saying, some people are gonna have to step up, you know? And, you know, and to that point, we'll do our best to guide whoever is in that chair, that's our job.
Right.
But ultimately, you guys are the ones that control the public and where the meeting's going. We just advise you to help you legally and stay on course with the ordinances. But I would just, you know, I would stay pat with the way you are until you have to leave. And if Greg can, you know, hang on for another month or so, then, you know,
Yeah.
maybe we'll have an opportunity, because with these openings, you know, we're gonna solicit, you know, other people to fill the vacancies
Exactly.
as
I
well.
think we need to.
And we don't know who those people could be. There may be some people who have done this in the past that
Right.
may want to come forward.
So I guess, you know, where I'm at is, I'm gonna, if it's all right with everybody here, is I'll continue to ask for some leeway in terms of being sworn into my new position, and hopefully carry us through August, the August meeting. And hopefully at that time, we'll kind of know where Bob is at. And at the August meeting, we can have a good definitive discussion about transitioning and all those kinds of good things. Does that sound reasonable?
And I think under our bylaws, typically June or July is the period when we nominate the annual chair people
Right.
anyway. So really all you're asking for is an extension, you know, because of the shifting people and positions. You're asking for an extension, which I don't think is unreasonable, as long as the board agrees with that. No one's gonna, you know, bang the gavel that I want to be number one or number two.
Well, if that's the case, here you go. Come on now. Let's go.
Then I think that's a fair solution in the short run, just because there is a lot of transition. And
Right.
we have the unique potential of somebody coming back who has a lot of experience to also
Exactly.
guide the board. Whether or not they're in the position or not, they'll be here to help. So, I mean, again, it's your board, you can do as you feel, but I do agree with Sheila that, you know, it's probably best just to postpone those annual elections until some other things play out here.
So what, you know, again, you guys are awful quiet most of the time.
No, I thought that was all good.
What do you think,
One
Greg?
month at a time.
Yeah?
I kind of don't want to stay on, but I will.
Gee, Greg. How do you really feel?
Well, it's a 60-day notice you have to give, you know that.
I haven't even cleaned my sap buckets from the spring.
Uh,
Yeah.
I know, I got a lot on my plate. And
I know,
I'm
yeah.
very busy, but, you know, I have a commitment to the town, and I feel like I'll stay on if there's a limited number of people that are members.
Yeah, and I think by August, the next meeting, we'll probably have some firmed up. You know,
Yes.
you'll understand, and we'll maybe know more about where Bob will be at that point.
Right.
And then we'll know for certainty what's gonna happen. So
Right.
I think we're only pushing it off a month, I think is
Yeah.
all we're doing.
Yeah, and until the select board then gets additional candidates to
Right.
fill some positions, I would not mind at that point staying on as ex officio.
Yeah.
In other words, I could have all the discussion and all that stuff, I just can't vote on anything.
So you become sort of like the quiet alternate, except you wouldn't
Yeah,
be quiet.
exactly.
Except you wouldn't be quiet.
I'm never quiet, if you haven't figured that out.
And we're already posting for,
I wanted to get the feedback here, and then we'll go ahead and put it out there.
Well, I think we need to, because at a minimum, I'm gone, and in all probability, Greg will have to step down,
Right. I
particularly as we get towards fall.
Yeah, I think you're hearing that you're gonna have a 30-day, or, minimum, you're gonna have a 30-day notice for two positions, and likely, maybe 60 days possibly, but within that period, you're gonna have two positions gone.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it
so
makes
we
sense
need
to
to
at least to
get-
start to look now.
Yeah.
We'll
We
get
need
it
to
back
get
up on
busy.
the website.
Yep.
Because is there even an alternate?
No,
No.
we have an alternate for the zoning board, but not the planning board.
I don't know if we've ever had well, we have the positions out there, but we've never had it filled. We've just been lucky to have, until now, we have had 7. Before that, we've had 6 and 5, and so this was great
A lot
for
of
the short
time-
run.
Towns typically have 5 planning board members, don't they?
Yeah, it's between 7 and 5, usually it's an odd number, but, yeah.
The town just revised the budget committee to be fewer members.
It just makes it difficult, though, if you've got absentees, once you get
To
down
get
to
a
3 and
quorum.
4, it gets, to carry the vote, it gets a little more difficult.
Yep.
We had one meeting with 2. The chair and I.
Okay, so for other, are we done?
Yes,
No.
now we're gonna move to planner communications, and as we kind of agreed via a late email that we were gonna take up the Valley View Acres subdivision, since it was not part of the formal agenda.
Right. And all we have to do is the findings of fact, which I have drafted. You have a copy. You can take a few minutes if you want to read through it. We have looked at the subdivision and condominium plats. They did revise as we requested, so that is ready for signatures as well. I think we just like to move forward with this, and so that they can get things recorded. They will want to start construction this fall.
Okay.
That's where we're at. Obviously, all the conditions and, the biggest ones will be all the conditions on the end that they still have to comply with, and that'll be through staff.
Okay. All right, if you'll give us a few minutes, we want to read through this. Thank you.
If you have any questions, we're here. And then we have one more item after that. A loaded sledgehammer on the end.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I don't like the sound of this.
No, it's not that.
It's not
That bad.
that bad, but it's not fun.
No.
Portions that you'll want to read are probably the actual criteria and then the
Yep.
conditions at the end. Front part's just kind of a narrative.
This is all covered.
Yeah.
Erosion control per lot.
What's required?
They have it on there.
No, we have, it's part of the condition that we have to provide an independent single lot plan. Very clear. It's, one.
Yeah, that was everything that we discussed, right?
Those are all the conditions that I took from my notes. That you made motions on. And again, you've got, in that particular case, you've got, not that we rely on it, but you've also got the DEP that did a review on this as well, so.
Did they ever cut the trees up there?
No, that's why they want to kind of get approval, because the bat.
Long
habicu-
bat.
The bat habicular period is coming to, if it hasn't come to an end, it's coming to an end very soon. So I think they're going to want to start getting in there and wood cutting in the fall or early winter, and really get going on this in the spring. probably do some of the work over the winter, I don't know. Depends on I think it's probably the construction, the availability of contractors at this point.
It's just the air conditioning in here. It sounds like the wood.
It does something out there.
The door moved too.
Yeah, no, there doesn't appear to be much breeze out there.
No, I think it's just the air conditioning.
First I thought it might be rain.
Yeah, that does. Sorry. Can really hear it howling.
Yeah, it's what you get tuned in. Yeah, that's like I keep thinking of some spooky movie. Rain hitting it.
Grab Toto, we're going.
Hey, I used to live in a part of the country where you had to know about tornadoes and you had to have a plan, and I had one touchdown within a quarter mile of my house. I was also at a Relay for Life where one was tracked heading towards us, and we got evacuated into, first, you know where they put us? In a gym with a wall of glass. And
Yeah,
I'm
no.
thinking to myself, not a good idea. And then finally, the fire department showed up. This was cops. The fire department showed up and go, everybody inside, tearing us up.
Yeah.
Shards.
I grew up I spent 11 years in North Alabama. Let me tell you, I know the tornadoes too.
I have one question after all of that.
Okay.
It gets back to the responsibility for the maintenance of the septic systems that we
Yes.
saw in those plans.
Yep, there's a note on the plan already.
I see that, and does that include treatment, that word treatment? Or it's already on the plan since we did it before, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I could
Yeah,
just see
some of
that
these-
being a passel of worms if it's
Oh,
not.
yeah. It's all, that note was already added to the plan that you'll
Okay.
be signing this evening. But yeah, some of these conditions have been added to the plan, some haven't, but I just kept them what you decided that evening, just for
Okay.
simplicity purposes.
So,
I
what-
did note one typo that I've got, and what I'll do is you'll sign the back sheet and I'll insert it onto page 2, conclusions of law.
Yeah,
Should be subdivision plan, not site plan. review
yeah,
standards, so.
yeah, okay. Okay, board, how do you feel about this? This was another one that took,
A very long time.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know, now with the sunset provision, we don't have to be dealing with this anymore.
Right.
As new ones come along, thank God, thank God. So,
But there's a pile of them out there still.
I know, I
Just
know.
like this and
Okay. So I think we're prepared to sign? Yeah? Okay. And you had an additional item?
Yes, I'll start and then I'll let you finish, okay? As passed on through the council, we are in a moratorium situation right now for mobile home
Type 2
Type 2
manufactured housing.
in the
So
shoreline
what
zoning.
is that?
That is a
It's like
mobile
this
home,
building.
14 feet or older, and 14 feet or wider, and is constructed after 1976.
Okay. Now,
And
does
it's
that
on a
include these
chassis.
modular homes?
No,
No.
that is type 2.
Okay, so those are still
Double
allowed.
wides, basically.
And what the moratorium is to, what happened was, there was, I'll call it a cheat sheet, more or less, just an
Yep.
outline that the
I'm
code
sure.
enforcement has had for years. And on that, it had listed that those were not allowed in the shoreline zone, and everybody went along with that. However, after doing research, Scott and I have been unable to find where it was banned in the shoreline zone. I think it was just, somebody put that table together and it just stuck the course of time, and everybody.
Sometimes lucky accidents
Right.
work out, but now we have to deal with it.
Now we have to deal with it because now we can't find the ordinance that says that they're prohibited in the shoreline zoning. So the council's asking us to create some language as to how we address this concern. Part of my concern is that, you know, we're getting to a fine line of maybe discriminatory housing situation here where social economic conditions, you know, you say you can be in any other zone, but you can't be where the value is higher.
Yep.
We walk a fine line with that, and I think we'll probably look to get some legal advice as we go forward. I guess at this point, we just need to tell you that that will be something that we'll be needing to work on with progressive workshops. I would suggest we do it, you know, again, when the new board kind of gets established here
Yep.
in August.
So what we're saying right now is, if anybody approaches the town to do so, the council has formally voted a moratorium on approvals of those.
Correct.
So it's status quo until such time as new
You
language
have
is
6 months
developed.
from the time they enacted that, and then it can be extended again if more time is needed. You know, they're doing their due diligence, but more time is needed.
Okay.
So at this point, I guess what we can do is we'll start trying to pull together, see what other towns may have done for informational purposes, start giving the board a little bit of information that we have to share. And then I think what we should do is probably in August, at the August meeting, schedule some workshops initially. Maybe
We get
spend an
Mary
hour.
involved with,
Yeah, spend an hour or something before one of the planning boards and just start going through
mhm.
what the course of action will be, if any. You know,
Right.
we don't even know at this point.
Well, and again, it would require the adoption of a new ordinance, is what you're saying.
And be an amendment.
Amendment to the ordinance and amendment to that zone.
Okay, and don't those ultimately have to be approved at town meeting?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yes,
So-
yeah.
Okay,
So, I mean, anything we do to an ordinance has to be approved at a town meeting.
okay.
So, I mean, all we're doing is building that for the case, which, you know, again, 6 months puts them into January, which unless they have a special election, which they probably won't, most likely it'll be an extension of a moratorium again
Back
to the
until
June
the
election, the
Okay.
regular annual town meeting.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
more
that's
like-
gonna be tricky.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
gonna be
there's-
very tricky.
There are other things that you would have to change definitions.
Right?
Yep,
We'd have to go through by changing this, does it affect anything else, whether there's a domino effect in there. There are some stipulations, state stipulations that you have to allow mobile home or manufactured homes type ones in parts of your town. You can't be explicit and blanket
the whole thing.
the whole thing.
Right,
However, we gotta look at how much, because quite frankly, Raymond has a lot of shoreline zoning.
exactly.
So that, we'll have to see how that plays into,
You know, in particular, if, you know, if
600
somebody,
feet is much more advanced than most towns too.
you know, and if somebody owns a lot in that shoreline zone, and wants to go that route, yeah, this can be a very sticky wicket. Because you could be dealing with a variety of conditions. Somebody that doesn't really want to build at this point in time, I mean, there's a lot of, but the socioeconomic thing is one you're gonna have to be very careful,
Right.
very careful.
And affordable housing and that type of, you
Exactly.
fall into a, you know, I mean, I understand where everybody was coming from soliciting the council, but it's a very fine line
It
that, you know,
certainly
and
is.
I think we'll be looking to the state to give us some guidance as well, and,
town attorneys.
Well,
Towns-
it's also an opportunity, if we start to get into this, to maybe just review requirements for those structures within the town. You know, I don't know what we have.
Well, one of the things we looked at was initially to see, you know, you think of mobile homes, they're just kind of plunked down on the ground and anchored in, but, you know, we've already seen that they do require either a full frost wall or a full concrete
Yeah.
slab, so they're a
Exactly.
little more formidable than they may be in some other communities, but, you know, there's still some construction, I'm sure, issues that,
Well, and
don't-
safety issues,
Right.
there's, you know, standard issues in terms of what's habitable, what isn't, you know, I mean, you know, yeah, it's gonna open up a lot
you know,
of
and
cans.
we were talking today, what's to stop somebody from building a small, thin ranch that mimics a mobile home?
Exactly,
You wouldn't stop them, but you
No.
would stop a mobile home because of the way it's manufactured.
exactly. Exactly. So, you know, no matter which direction you go, it's gonna be founded in, good principles. And I have a feeling that from whence this came, the founding structure of the request was probably from a different perspective. So it's going to be quite a challenge, I think. Okay.
What's the date of when that was alleged to be?
The original sheet that I saw was from 2009.
No.
No.
So it's not
What
that-
do you mean, the moratorium?
No,
Oh, the cheat sheet?
Cheat sheet?
yeah.
Yeah, the earliest date I saw was
2009.
2009, Karen Strout put it together.
But we went back into the ordinance, we went back to 2005,
5.
4, something like that, and we couldn't, it wasn't
Never
amended.
found it, never amended it, never.
No,
Check
It's
town
been a
minutes.
policy, but it's not been.
it wasn't even a policy, it was just that somebody put a sheet in there, and, you know, kind of like you do the shoreline zoning, just that it was prohibited.
And it's possible
It was
that
probably
she
a
got the-
typo or a mistake, and it just has kind of,
And the sheet may have come from another town, that it was on there and that
Yeah.
just
could've
got
been.
carried through.
Well, I've got to say that the questionnaire sheet that the applicants now have to work with really makes life, for them, I've got to say, a lot easier. I've got to imagine it helps you too.
yeah, and I think going forward, we need to kind of make one a little bit, we're starting to see subdivisions come back, so,
Mhm.
especially amended subdivisions, so
Yeah.
we probably should work on a subdivision checklist specific for that. Just because like tonight, we're seeing these extensions, these road widenings, we're seeing, that's primarily what we're seeing right now is, you know, the old subdivisions are getting extended or they're coming back with a second life.
Right, you know, particularly when zoning changes allow you to build on smaller
Right.
lots.
Yeah.
You're probably going to see a lot more of that.
And then going back to that, the mobile home, and the only zone that they're not allowed in currently is the VR, but they're allowed everywhere else.
Hmm.
Now, we talked a lot about that when you did the comprehensive plan.
Well, that's what
And I don't know
they're-
if that's
you're
where that's
kinda-
coming from.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, you're kind of getting into that territory as well.
It's kind of, well, really didn't find anything in that initially, but we'll dig through it a little bit more to see, you know, it doesn't really correlate shoreline zoning with it.
No, it didn't.
No.
It was pretty general.
Right.
Yeah.
And people didn't like mobile homes.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right?
I tell you though, I've
It's
seen
awful.
some that you can drive all over the country that
Yeah.
have hot tubs and fireplaces in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things are
Right,
like
right.
quite the thing.
And if you go to the
Okay.
south, you see some very, very nice setups.
Yeah.
Very, very
You know,
nice.
Florida's.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, or-
Move to
yeah.
adjourn?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Not too bad.
Make sure you have, stop by, you gotta